This is my contribution to the book panel at LSA 2021. African Literature in Digital Age, Class and Sexual Politics in New Writing from Nigeria and Kenya, book published by Dr. Shola Adenekon. I would like to just title my 10 minutes, Cyberliterature, Framing Class and Sexualities. And I would quote Chinua Achebe for a start. The new literature in Africa is aware of the possibilities available to it for celebrating humanity in our continent. It is aware also that our world interlocks more and more with the worlds of others, end of quote. If there's one book that typifies or illustrates Chinua Achebe's projection, it is Shola Adenekon's painstaking digital findings on what the electronic footprints of selected African writers tell us. Let's take a look at the electronic interlocking worlds. The book builds up as an African storyteller would. It initially stands outside its main concerns as it tells stories of a present stars, or if you like, celebrities. Their trials, tests, and triumphs are scaffolding to an unfolding craft. Chimamanda's stories are not that of an average Nigerian, but her presence in the opening chapter invokes the turbulence and affluence of a nation of Nigeria. In a similar vein, Vanga Wainaina's plight and profundity allows us to take a journey to Kenya to learn how production and consumption of a written word constantly re-engineers itself. Kenya and Nigeria are the two African countries that occupies the canvas on which the theme of class, sexuality, and politics intersect. On a lighter note, the choice of these two nations can be read as the axis of the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, having Kenya in East Africa and Nigeria in West Africa. In any case, as the book grows in pages, like Adekpele's teeth, questions begin to grow. These questions will be raised later. So, how is a new African literature produced? The old form has given way to a new form of production and consumption. According to Adenekon, and I quote, writers are putting their work on cyberspace because communities are emerging from this space and because increasing number of Africans use the internet as part of their day-to-day engagement with their societies and the world, end of quote. In this new form, the work of the author is not done when the last dot rests on the page. The digital space conjoins the author with readers, and a series of engagements commences. In this new world of digitalization, popular culture and literature are not considered as opposites. So what are opposites? I will say the screen and the street, or the street and the screen. Popular culture in its everydayness, according to the author, should not be conflicted with the spectacular and elevated language that finds its way into African literature. In other words, everyday existence is mediated in text and not just transferred without creative treatment. There are enough examples to support this idea. In the words of the author himself, and I quote, "The digital writing that speaks to the big issues of our times also reflect everyday socio-political engagements," end of quote. In effect, activities on the streets flow into creative spaces on the screen. What distinguishes the old from the new is how the screen has created and maintains social status. As stories are told, they are also told, according to the author. The confliction of telling and selling stories on digital platforms may not appear problematic at first, but for a discerning reader of Adeneko's book, it soon becomes obvious that Adeneko is preparing the grounds for an implicit critique of print capitalism. The subsection of a background chapter should also not be taken as an endorsement of the incursion of market forces into literary enterprise. In Adeneko's words, and I quote, "The author and the text are marketable products which combined increase the marketability of a products." End of quote. There are examples within the global publishing trade. Though these examples are out of the range of this book, they can still illustrate the idea that can support Adeneko's position of how African writers have become marketable globally. Anehi Edoro in 2015 mentioned Wilbur Smith as the Africa's richest and biggest celebrity novelist, with 120 million copies of his novels sold. 2 years later, Jean-Marie Jackson, an assistant professor of world Anglophone literature in Johns Hopkins University, states, and I quote, "The Cameroonian novelist Imbolo Umboe captured $1 million contract for her first book, Behold the Dreamers. That's even before it joined the Opera Book Club Pantheon in the year 2017, end of quote. I have a collection, thanks to Dr. Yegbele, who has collected Wilbur Smith's books. Some would say it's pop literature. Like I said, it's really not part of the focus of a book by Dr. Adeneko, but it goes to show that there are African writers that are celebrities and are actually selling large copies and volumes of their work. So what this brings us to is how poor cooperation can African writers get? The issue of, and I quote, "the author and the text are marketable products, which combined increase the marketability of a product," is from Dr. Adeneko's book. It's really not a big deal in the book. It would only be a detour for anti-capitalists who get bothered with how capitalism can pollute creative ideas. Anehi Edoro again in 2014 brought up the issue when reflecting on African Writers Incorporated, the dirty question of making money from novels, end of quote. He asked the innocuous question back then, should big corporations be offered the chance to endorse individual writers? The responses came, as usual, from different backgrounds. And he attempted a response to his own question by stating, one way to make people do good work that speaks to a popular audience is high financial stakes. After all, it worked for Nollywood. It worked for the Nigerian music industry. Music videos have become exponentially better. Production quality has improved. Why? Because good music means good money, end of quote. However, this set up a very lengthy debate among the fervid readers of the online brittle newspaper as far back as 2017. But let us face other issues raised in this seminar walk and leave the idea of the corporatization of the literary enterprise. So what are the big issues? Very quickly, writers online and how the medium has given the message, freedom to express burning issues is just an envelope that covers other germane concerns. The reader is led by the path of seeing body politics / history as part of big history and liberation from Western discursive practices. There is something to learn about the body, and it can be used, and it is used as part of historical analysis. We also get to read about the impact of colonial modernity and the resistance of writers, both old and new, to the colonial project. But it is in the area of the methodology that Adenekon used that is of interest to me. Because in ethnography, a writer spends time in a community, noting their ways of life, their struggles, and most importantly, their triumphs. The observations then form the basis of the analysis and description in the long run. However, in virtual ethnography, the text forms the unit of analysis and the foundation on which arguments are built. Instead of spending time in physical communities, the researcher moves from one virtual community to another. In Shola Adenekon's book, themes and ideas form stories written by selected writers, and this he used for his own analysis, the base of his analysis. So stories and their writers get prominence, but unfortunately the readers and their contributions are left to the imagination of readers of this book. There are quite a number of new examples now how readers' reaction also affects the final production. But this is not part of the focus of Adenekon's book. But I have a few questions before my conclusion. And these are the questions. What difference will a classless Africa mean to the production and consumption of African literature? Is the middle class homogeneous? What possible hierarchies are visible and possible in this class or status? When material accumulation defines class, and when knowledge and position determine status, can we say both are one and the same? What will an emancipatory reading of African literature look like? So in conclusion, as far as I'm concerned, this is a book about African literature and its various extensions. It speaks to how lives of writers and their writings are becoming one. These writers show up on platforms to help us form opinions on issues far from imagined nations. We see them dance in front of iconic images and read about someone's husband who is a medical doctor and parents who are communicated to via Facebook, via FaceTime, the Apple app that allows users make video calls. It is a book that stretches beyond just literature, but involves the life of the author, as opposed to the written book. Once it is written, the authority for meaning is no more resides with the writer or the readers. Thank you very much.